Yeah, thank you all for joining today. I'm proud to say that speaker is Prapti Rajeev today, and she has shown consistent academic excellence over the past 4 years, and I think she would be able to impart a lot of important knowledge that we could use in the future. So over to you, Prapti.
Good evening, everybody. I hope I'm audible to everyone. Firstly, I would like to thank my friend, my classmate Mika, and also Lawyers Hub for giving me this opportunity. I have gotten a platform that so that I can show my peers, my friends on how do you even like how do you actually write an answer in a law examination, be it KSLU or be it any other private institution as well. So firstly, let me present my screen. I hope my screen is visible to everybody. Is my screen visible? Okay, I hope my screen is visible to everybody. All right, all right, all right. So let me begin with the session or to sum up what and all I'll be including in this session. Firstly, it will be on how do you break down the structure of an answer. Firstly, I'll be dealing with KSLU centric answers, followed by general answers that you write in a law examination as well. So, in a KSLU examination, you generally have a 10 marker and a 6 marker for the 80 marks pattern, and you have a 20 marker and a 16 marker for a 100 mark examination pattern. So, that is being currently followed by the current first and second years. So, before beginning the session on how do I actually start, how do you actually write an examination, I have one question for all of you. How many of you have studied everything, as in are clear with every single thing, but are still not able to get the marks that you're wanting to, or you feel that the evaluator has not given you even enough marks? Can I get some answers? Can you guys speak up? I cannot see the comment section. Anyone would be fine. Anyone?
Adya comments, I don't even know my results yet.
Okay, all right, no issues, no issues. But may I know if you're in? Can I know in which semester are you? Are you in the second semester?
Second semester.
Okay, okay, no issues, no issues. Moving on. Let me start with why do students lose their marks often? Let me be clear. I'm specifically talking about the KSLU examination pattern. So the most often thing that the KSLU evaluator checks for is the structure of the answer. So if the student lacks any sort of structure in the answer, if the student writes long paragraphs, because when you write an answer you have to structure it out properly. If you don't structure it, if you don't underline it, if there are no clear points for your answer, then the evaluator loses interest in even correcting your papers, because the main thing that the evaluator looks into is what all points have you written and what is the structure of the answers. So when you're starting with an answer, you generally start with an introduction, right? So what you actually do is write introduction, underline it, and start with your answer, followed by whatever question is being asked. So why do students lose marks often in an examination? Firstly, if there is no structure in the answer sheet, if you write long paragraphs, as in which does not make sense, it's only because you are filling out the papers only to get marks, but the actual truth is you wouldn't be getting any marks if you write long paragraphs. Thirdly, no clear points, you're not pointing out on what question is actually being asked in the examination. Fourthly, the examiner cannot easily scan what is written. If you're imagine if there's a question being asked and you're writing, be it for 10 months or be it for 6 months. So if you start writing the answer, you are just writing a paragraph for 2 pages, 3 pages, and there is no proper structure. You're not pointing out what is the important thing in that particular answer. Okay, so if you don't point out all of those things, then the examiner will not be able to figure out what you're actually writing and what is the actual answer for the question being asked. So these four are the main reasons on why students often lose marks, subject to few things that KSLU does that every one of us know. But the main thing is, if the answer lacks structure, if there is long paragraphs, or if there are no clear points, the student often loses marks in their examination. All right. So now, to begin with, I'm being KSLU specific right now. So KSLU, as in Karnataka State Law University, what the university prescribes or what kind of questions the university gives. So currently, we have two patterns, two paper patterns. Okay. So in our law college, the third, fourth, and fifth years follow the 80 marks pattern, and the first and the second years follow the 100 marks pattern. So I'll be starting with the 80 marks pattern. So in a 80 marks question paper, what usually is asked is, so you have 5 10 markers and 5 6 markers. So in 10 markers, the questions are like straightforward. It's like theory based, completely theory based. So and coming to the 6 marker, the 6 marker question can be asked of two types. One is direct short notes, so either like write a short note on Hugo Grotius, or write a short note on administrative efficiency, something like that. So when you're talking about a case-based question in a 6 marker, so you will, or any topics that you have for your examination, you will be given a scenario based on a certain topic. So be it law of torts or any administrative law, you will have case-based question for every law paper. There can be exceptions in jurisprudence and all of that, but you will mostly there will be case based in a 6 marker question. So you have two types in 6 marker. One is completely short note based and one is case based. All right, so I will be starting on how do you answer a 10 marker or be it a 16 marker for the 100 marks pattern. So there's a formula that I have figured out, that I've made up from what all answers I've been writing since my first semester. I'm currently in my 8th semester. So this is what I've figured out throughout the years. So in a 10 marker question, what you will have to follow is, so you have something called Dream C formula, okay? So Dream C, I have come up with this particular formula because it's easy to remember. You have Dream and you have C, okay? So it's not easy to forget also. So Dream C formula, so D stands for definition or introduction. So what happens is, in the introduction part itself, you include the definition, and you suppose obviously it is a 10 marker question. So what you do is you will have to at least write the introduction for half a page or at least maximum 1 page from what experience I have had. Okay, followed by R, also known as the rule, section, or provision. So if there is any, apart from the non-law papers, in the law papers, obviously all the questions we will have to be including provisions, section, rules, etc. So once you're done with your definition part or once you're done with your introduction part, the major thing that you'll have to include is what provision the question is dealing with, what relevant section are being used in that particular answer, or what is the provision, article, be it article or be it any section. Okay, then coming to the explanation part, which is the main body. I'll be showing up a sample answer in the coming slides, but here in the explanation part, you will have to include what is the question asking you for. So the main content, basically the main content that you'll have to include comes in the explanation part, followed by the application part. So what happens in application part is, or any provision that you have stated in the rule part, you will have to explain that provision with whatever question is being asked. Okay, so if you have section 14 of Indian Constitution, you will have to write that, you'll have to explain it, and you'll have to correlate it with whatever question is being asked, followed by mentioning case laws or illustrations. So, mentioning case law is a mandatory thing in any answer that you write, in any law paper that you write, because case law, writing case law carries the most, as in it carries more weightage, because obviously when they are asking you a law based question, it will be based on certain case law, certain precedents, right? Only through that the examiner or anyone will be clear that yes, this concept was based on this particular case law. It is like that. So if by chance, if there is no case law or anything of that sort for that particular answer, what you can do is you can come up with any illustration, because writing an illustration can also fetch you marks. It is, you can say it is equally important as a case law also. Then followed by conclusion. So after you're done with everything, it is better, or it, I am damn sure like most of you might not have enough time to conclude your answer or anything of that sort. But what I suggest is you will every time have to end the answer with a conclusion, because if you have a proper structure to your answer, the evaluator will obviously think that yes, this person knows, or this person knows how to structure the answer properly, and therefore it can fetch you marks. So this is the dream C formula, like for a 10 marker, on how do you actually answer a 10 marker or a 16 marker for that matter for the 100 marks pattern. Now I will show you an example for a 10 marker. Just a minute. There is some issue coming. Okay, just a minute, just a minute. Is my screen visible? All right, all right, all right. Let me take like a sample question for a 10 marker. So this is on the topic, this is a subject called right to information that we 8th semester students currently have. So, all right. So, being clear or being clear about the question, first be clear about the question, okay? So, are everyone able to see the question? Okay, okay, okay. So the question goes like, trace the evolution of the Right to Information Act 2005. What role did grassroots movements, particularly but there was a particular movement, and the question is basically asking the explanation of that and what were the statutory rights. If you guys are not able to understand anything, please stop me in the middle. I will answer to it. Okay, so when there's a question like evolution or something of that sort, how do you actually write an answer? Okay, first obviously, about the dream C formula that I explained to you all guys earlier, start with the definition or the introduction part. Okay, explain what is Right to Information Act, what, how did it start, or what is the current status of it. Like it can even be general, for that manner. Explain what is RTI Act, what is Right to Information, how has it helped people, etc, etc. Okay, now coming to it, can you can fill up half of the page in the introduction, include your definitions, include and next, if there is any provision for it, you can then come up with provision for it. For this particular answer right now, there is no provision as such. Okay, so we will directly be going into the evolution part of RTI Act, which is being asked in the question. Okay, so now in the evolution part, uh, there are certain just a minute. Is the slide going? Okay. So, in the evolution part, there are a series of events that have been carried out. Okay. So then, since this question is pertaining to the evolution part, you will have to figure out what were the different phases or what were the different evolution that finally brought the enactment of the 2005 RTI Act. Okay. Starting with the phase one. Okay, there are if there are three phases mentioned, three phases. If there are four phases mentioned, four phases. But be clear with the evolution part. You will have to start with the evolution part, starting with phase one. Whatever is the explanation part of phase one, followed by if there is any judicial decision for it, any judicial decision or any sort of judicial decision or even case law. You can also call it case law. You can come up with judicial decision for that particular phase. Coming up with the phase two, you can explain what phase two was pertaining to the question. This is the explanation part of the second half of the question, that is the MKSS movement. And then if there is any case law for your phase two, you can also add that. For this particular thing, there was no case law, so I haven't added any sort of case law as such. Okay. Then if there is, how many ever phases are there, you will have to include all the phases with a judicial decision or with a case law, and then come up and then end the answer with what the present act is. The present act was the RTI, Right to Information Act of 2005. So finish up with that enactment, that act, and then conclude your answer. So this is one type of question or one type of answer that you have. This is one part, and also there is the dream c formula that I told. This is definitely not according to the dream c thing, but you can also answer your question in this particular way. So what happens is, there are two options that can be done. One is, if there is any concept that is being asked, you can explain the concept. If there are certain pointers for your concept, explain that particular pointer and explain a judicial decision for that particular point, and then explain every point that way, and come up with a case law or come up with a judicial decision for that particular point. One way is that, like how this answer is particularly written, and the second way is the dream seed formula that I earlier mentioned. So in that, what happens is, you will follow the dream seed formula, and the case law in that method usually comes at the end. First you'll finish up with the main content, main answers. So you'll explain the introduction, you'll explain the provision, you'll write the main body, the main content of the answer, followed by the case law. So these are the two main things that can be done. One is, you can include the case laws in between your answers, and one, you can include your case laws at the end of the answer and then conclude your answer. I hope this is clear to everybody. And then, um all right, coming up to the next point of the. All right, Adya is asking, can dream C applied, can be applied to every question? Adya, as I mentioned you earlier, there are two main methods that you can answer the question. Okay, one is the dream C method, and one is the question where you can mention the pointers. Suppose I just now showed you the evolution part, right? So what happens is, in evolution, you can technically answer your answers in dream C method as well. So if you feel that this answer should be answered in the dream C formula method, you can go ahead with that. If you feel that writing case law for each of your pointers would be a better option, you can also go with that. So if there's an answer, if there are, if your question asks for either evolution or either like any sort of steps, what are the various steps or what are the various reasons for that matter, you can go ahead with the pointers, explanation of pointers, and followed by the case law. So what you can do is, yes, you can apply dream seed formula for most of your questions, not all questions. Depending upon the question, you can apply your dream seed formula. Adya, am I clear? All right, I will move on. I will move on. Okay, so next up, you have the six marker questions. So as I mentioned earlier, you in six marker you mainly have the case based questions and you have a direct short note questions. So six marker is obviously for the 80 marks pattern, and I think the 100 marks pattern has two 10 marker question that is based on case based questions. So the method is same, it's just that the content matters in a 6 marker for in a case based for a 6 marker and in a case based for a 10 marker. So what happens in a 6 marker question, or how do you actually have to answer a 6 marker question is, first, let's take the case-based questions, okay? So in case-based questions, definitely I'm damn sure all of you must be knowing how a case-based question is asked. So in a case-based question, you will be getting a scenario on any of the topic that is there in your units, that is you have 5 units. So any scenario will be asked in a case-based, and based on that, you will have to answer your question, answer. So what happens in a case-based is, you have a certain method, like how you have the dream C formula for the 10 marker, you have a 5 lakh method for a 6 marker as well. I think everyone must be knowing this 5 lakh method, but what you'll have to actually include in a 6 marker for a case based question is, so in 5 lakh method you have the facts, issues, law, application, and the conclusion. So the question, the case that is given to you, that will definitely contain the facts of the question, and the issue will be based on what has been actually asked. Let me show you an example for a case based question. All right, in a case based question, is the document visible? Word document. Okay. All right. So, I have taken like a very classic case, that is the Dono versus Stevenson case, that was a ginger beer case. I'm damn sure, I think the second semester students will have it right now in their law taught subject. So, in this, the question was, it was based on a scenario wherein Asha was a person who visited the cafe with her friend. She ordered for a bottle cold coffee, but the bottle was opaque. She could not basically see what was inside. After consuming that particular drink, she felt uneasy, and upon checking, she discovered that there was an insect inside the bottle. So subsequently, she suffered severe food poisoning and nervous shock. After which she filed for a suit against the manufacturer, claiming for negligence. She stated that there was negligence from the manufacturer side, and hence she held the manufacturer liable for this particular thing. So now the question here is, the manufacturer argues that there is no contractual relationship that has existed between Asha and the manufacturer, and the manufacturer here is claiming that he shouldn't be liable for the act that has happened with Asha. So now how do you actually answer? The question that is asked here is whether the manufacturer is actually liable for the negligence that was caused. Apply relevant legal principles and case laws for this particular scenario. So now the facts. So what do you actually do for facts is, you can write as it is of what is being asked in the question. Write the facts as in how did the case actually was carried out. That comes in the facts part. Now the issue is whether the manufacturer can be held liable for the negligence that was caused to Asha in absence of a contractual relationship. Here in this particular question, there was no certain contractual relationship that was existing between Asha and the manufacturer. So now your issue will also be based on whether, your issue should definitely start with whether or what, something like that, because you cannot just write a simple sentence for an issue, because your entire answer, as in your law or your application, will be based on what issue you are stating. So here the issue was whether the manufacturer can be held liable for the negligence that was caused to Asha. Now, what do you actually write in the law part? So this this particular scenario revolves around a major and a landmark case law in the law of torts, which was the case of Dono versus Stevenson. So you will have to write the principle that is governed in this particular scenario comes from the case of Dono versus Stevenson, and you will also have to establish what legal principle was used in this particular case. So obviously all of you would have read what the case was. So based on that, you will have to mention what legal principle was being used in this particular case. And then in this particular case there was a concept called neighborhood principle, where you will have to explain what the neighborhood principle talks about. So now what you'll have to actually include in the law part is explain directly, like directly state what the law is, what the case is, and if there is any sort of provision you will have to include, you will write the provision. Suppose if there is section 14 or section 13 of any sort of the act that is being written or that is being asked, you will have to explain that particular section, and you will also have to write what legal principle was established in that particular thing. You will have to include all this in the law part, and then coming up with the analysis or the application part. So since you are clear with what law or what legal principle was established in the law part, in the analysis part what you will have to do is whatever facts or whatever scenario is being asked in the question, you will have to correlate the facts of the case, that is the scenario of the question, with the legal principle or with the law that is being asked in the whatever law was stated in your answer. So you cannot directly write in the application part, you cannot directly state write a direct thing of like how you have written in the law part, because in the law part you will only have to mention directly, like it should be straightforward, whatever legal provision is being asked or whatever legal principle is established in that particular question. In analysis part you will have to establish a correlation between the facts, between the question and between the legal principle that you have stated. So what happens is in this you will have to write the facts, or like suppose in this particular question, here the company, that is from the manufacturer part, they owe the duty of care. So all this these duty of care, breach of duty, physical injury and mental shock, all these are said to be the elements that you have mentioned in the law part. Okay, so as I have told you, there should be a correlation in the analysis part. So all of these elements will have to be explained with whatever question is being asked. So here the company or the manufacturer owed the duty of care to the petitioner or to the plaintiff, and then the opaque bottle prevented Asha from detecting the defect. So I hope everyone is clear with it. You will have to correlate whatever legal principle is being, whatever legal principle you have stated in the law part with the scenario or with the question or with the facts that you have stated. And coming to the conclusion part, conclusion should be very short, like in a 2 or 3 liners. This is for a 6 marker in pertaining to a 6 marker question. You will finally have to write what was concluded or what do you actually conclude in that particular answer. So here there can be opinions as well. So here in this particular question there was it was stated that the conclusion or what you can conclude is the manufacturer, that is the company, was held liable for negligence because it caused uh, problems to the plaintiff, and hence the manufacturer will be held liable. I hope the 5 lakh method is clear to everybody. This was coming to how long your answer should be for a 6 marker. It should be like for a 2.5 page. You'll have to explain in detail the law part and the analysis part. Keep these both in detail. Your conclusion, facts, and issue can be depending on whatever the scenario is. Now, the same question coming for a 10 marker that the 100 mark pattern has. So all of this that I have shown here, coming obviously you cannot exclude, you cannot extend the issue or whatever. So what the 10 marker people can do is, in the facts part, firstly explain whatever the facts or whatever is being given in the question, followed by what are the facts of the actual case. So you know that this case is directly based on the case, the landmark judgment of Bruno versus Stevenson. So you can also write the facts of that case because it's the same. And then coming up with the law part and the application part, be very thorough with whatever legal principle is being used, be very clear with whatever provision is supposed to come in that particular answer.
Adia asks a question: what was this a real case? Should the conclusion be the same as the court's decision?
Yes, yes, yes. That your opinions would come when you are not sure of what the answer is, but then whatever the court held in that particular landmark judgment or whatever the case is based on, your conclusion should also be based on that particular judgment. I hope I'm clear about it. In the As I was talking about the 10 marker thing, your law part and your application part should be explained in a very detailed format. Explain what the provision is, explain the legal principle, explain what each of the, so suppose in this particular question you had essentials of negligence. So you have duty of care, you have breach of duty, and you have damage caused due to the breach. So all of these elements or all of these essentials should be explained in detail. So what you can do is each of these essentials are written as pointers, right? Explain what each of the pointers talk about. Explain what is duty of care, explain what is breach of duty, and explain what was the damage caused due to the breach. So here how you can actually extend your answer is the whatever content you're writing for each of the essential, back it up with an illustration that will fetch you marks, because explaining it up with an illustration would make a lot of sense to you also and also to the evaluator, so that would definitely fetch you marks. So even due to that your content also would increase. Okay, so that is one thing that can be done for a 10 marker case based question. In the analysis part also, explain, firstly as I stated, correlate your law and the fact part, correlate and explain it as much as you can. Since as I had stated to you earlier, in the law part you are explaining, do the same thing with the analysis part as well. Explain, the correlation should be extended, as in how was the physical injury caused, what is the mental shock, what is, how did the manufacturer over duty of care to the plaintiff, all of that should be explained. Explain it, correlate it with the essential, and that is how you can get like a proper structured answer for a 10 marker. And follow it up with a conclusion. You can extend your conclusion as well. So that is how a 10 marker should actually be answered for a case based. Now moving on to a short, is my screen seen? Okay, okay. Okay, moving on to the short note part of the 6 marker. So what happens here, you have, this is like very simple. So in this, any question, your short note can be based on any specific topic that you have for your exam or that you are studying for your exam or what subject you have. So in what happens in a short marker is you have a particular topic, write the introduction part, write include like as I had explained to you in the dream C formula part, explain the introduction, include any provision, include any definition that you have in the introduction part, come to the main body, explain what the content is. If the question is asking you for the points, the reasons, or what the concept, if you think the answer would come completely in a paragraph, because it would be completely theoretical and there would be no pointers, what you can actually do to differentiate your answer or make it into a proper structure is, firstly write the heading. I want you guys to write the heading, like write introduction, underline the introduction, write what your introduction talks about. Then coming, if you have any sort of definition, write definition, explain if there is any scholar or something like that, according to so and so scholar, explain what that scholar has told, explain a definition like that, and then you can also give your own views or on the definitions that the scholars have given. And then so your introduction part or the definition part is sorted. So now here the evaluator will understand, yes, this is the introduction part, the student has written the introduction part, included the definition in the introduction part, and then you write the main content of the answer, what the question is asking you for. Include the, if there is any points for your answer, include the points, or if you think there are no points that can be included for your answer, you can go with the paragraph, but explain, write the heading, write the main heading on what the question is being asked. That is how you can explain that part, and then followed by the conclusion part. That is how you can properly structure your short note 6 marker question. I hope I'm clear with this. Moving on. Mm, okay, coming to the most important part, that is the time management. So you have, obviously there are two different patterns. You have 80 marks and you have 100 marks. So firstly, I'll be starting with the 80 marks pattern. So what the person can actually do for the 80 marks. So in a 80 marks, you have 5 10 marker and 5 6 marker. Okay. So you have 3 hours. Okay, you have 3 hours. So what how you can actually divide your time in these 3 hours is you have 5 units, right? So for one, depends on how you want to answer your paper. If you want to answer all the long marks first, long answers first, and then your short answers, that could also be fine. Or if you want to go unit wise, that also would work. Anything is completely normal. Okay. So then in the 10 marker, you a person would generally write it for a 4.5 page or 5 pages in general. Please do not extend above 5.5 because it would take your time also and it wouldn't let you answer the other questions also. So for a 10 marker question, use at least 30 to 35 minutes of your time. Maximum 40 minutes. If you go beyond that, you will not be able to complete your paper. What the suggestion that I would try to give you is, if you think there is a lot of content for this answer, how do I concise so much into one answer? Try including the main pointers, explain the main pointers, explain what you think is very relevant here right now at this moment, and concise it. Concise it like that, because if you sit and write the entire thing, it will take at least, I have heard my friends saying that they at least take 50 minutes to 1 hour to answer one 10 marker. That is not, you cannot do that because you wouldn't be able to complete your paper then. What you will have to generally do is, if you are answering it unit wise, take at least 50 minutes or 45 minutes. 45 minutes is like the minimum. I will say 45 minutes is the maximum time that you should take for one unit, because if you take 45 minutes for every unit, you will at least have 10 minutes left at last, 10 to 15 minutes max left at last. In that 10 to 15 minutes that is left, you can check, you can also add extra content that if you want. So you will have to keep 10 minutes or 10 to 12 minutes as buffer at the end. Do not write till the last moment. I know this is, it might not sound practical for some of you, but I would suggest keep at least 10 to 12 minutes of buffer time at the end, so that you know what you have written. To you check, you also check what you have written. And if you haven't underlined or you haven't highlighted the pointers, you can also take those 10 to 12 minutes in underlining whatever you want to point out. So for a 10 marker, take 35 minutes. For a 6 marker, take 10 to 15 minutes max. Okay. So I assume for the 100 marks pattern, they have 5 16 marker and 2 10 marker. So as I told you, depending on the marks, okay. So for a 16 marker, take at least 40 to 45 minutes. Try completing your answer in at least 40 minutes. Please concise it to 40 to 45 minutes, because you know that you have to answer your entire paper. And I would also suggest that please don't keep your paper incomplete, because as all of you know, KSLU giving you marks properly is like a big thing. So I suggest you that please answer your entire paper so that it can fetch you marks, even if you have not have had enough content, because you have attempted all 5 units. You are like, you are assured that yes, I have written all 5 units and I would get appropriate marks for how much ever I have answered. So now for the 100 marks pattern, you guys actually have 16 marker and the 20 marker thing. So for a 16 marker, take at least 45 minutes. And for the 20 marker, that is divided into 10 marker each, that is case based, I suppose. For that, take at least 20 minutes, 20 minutes max, or 22 to 23 minutes. Don't extend beyond that, because you know that you have to complete the paper, and stick to the timing, stick to what you have thought, stick to how much ever time that you have decided upon. Please do not extend your timing, because your main aim is to complete the paper on time. And also keep a buffer time of 10 to 12 minutes at the end. So this is with the time management part. Okay, coming to the presentation tips or how you can actually impress the evaluator. What you can do is, as I told you, there should be a proper structure for the answer. Having a proper structure is very important, because if you don't have a proper structure, the evaluator will definitely lose interest in correcting your papers. That is the first possible thing to happen, and there are possibilities of failing in particularly in the KSLU examination. Okay, so what can you do for actually increasing or for actually fetching marks? Okay, for presenting your answer, use headings. Use headings, underline your headings also. Use headings, use it as pointers, underline your headings. And coming to the main content part, if you have any section, any provision that you're writing in the content part, underline that section. Please underline the section. Also underline the main keyword that you think is important. So for example, if you take the negligence answer, as you guys had seen that there are essentials. Okay, so many of you might just go on writing the essentials. This is the breach of duty of care and all that as the essentials in a paragraph format. Even if you do like that, make sure you underline each of the essentials so that it directs the evaluator's uh, view on the highlighted or the underlined points. Also, when you're structuring your answer, make sure you leave lines as well. You are writing the introduction part. After the introduction part, please leave a line. Spacing should be there. If you write it from starting to end without leaving anything, then even a person like me wouldn't feel like correcting your paper and would also not find it interesting to see, or because an evaluator has no time and actually has no time to see your each line or to read every line of what you have written. So if you're writing the pointer, so if you're writing or underlining the keywords, he will look into the keywords, and yes, and if the keywords are right or if the headings are right, he will think that yes, the student knows about the thing, and he will correct it based on the keyword that you have written. That actually happens. So if you have the keywords or if you have the pointers that are written very correctly and which is very appropriate to the answer or the question that is asked, the evaluator will definitely give you marks based on the pointers that you have written. Also, if you're writing the case law, many people definitely, if they do not remember the case law, they make up case laws and write any like random case laws. That should be done in worst come worst scenarios if you're not getting any case law that you want to write. If you're writing proper case laws, like the correct case laws with the correct year. Also, when you're writing a case law, I don't according to what or how much I know, writing the citation isn't mandatory. You just write the year of the case law and like underline the case law as well. Underline the case law, and whatever, like in the case law, explain what the Supreme Court ruled. Okay, just writing that much would be enough when you're explaining a case law. So underline the case law and explain what is that. So that should be done when you're writing a case law. And please, I know definitely all of you might not have like a good handwriting or good presentation skills, but if you're underlining the keywords, and if you're using headings, that would also work great, because that would definitely fetch you marks even if your handwriting is not that great. So these are the few presentation tips on how you would actually want to present your answer. Now coming to a bad answer versus a good answer. So as I mentioned earlier, a good answer should have a clear heading. It should have pointers. It should have proper spacing. And coming to the 10 marker or the 6 marker, or coming to the 16 marker or the 10 marker, it should have, as far as the 10 marker is concerned, structure it properly. As I've stated, you can use the dream C formula, or you can also use the other method that I stated. So you can, if there are pointers, use the pointers, explain it with judicial decisions.
A question has been asked. Do you give synopsis before answering the questions? If so, do you elaborate it? Like, do you mention the subheadings as well?
All right, okay. As far as the synopsis part is concerned, I have heard from many people that they do write synopsis and then they start with the answer. So usually what you actually write in a synopsis is like what you actually would want to include in your that particular answer. My view on synopsis would be like 80-30%. In certain subjects or in certain answers, if you want, you can include synopsis and then go on with what you have stated in synopsis. I know, so you write like synopsis and write introduction or like basically the points, like suppose you're writing the dream sea thing, you will go on with what and all should be included in that answer, okay? So one, you can include synopsis. There is no harm in including synopsis, but one disadvantage would be if your answer is big or if you think that a lot of content should be added in that particular answer, then you would have to, because the synopsis itself takes like I think almost half of the page, right? So and then you actually start your actual answer. So your actual answer would just go up to 3.5 or 4 pages, okay? And I don't think that would be sufficient. So what you can do is there is no harm in including synopsis, but then if you think that you can complete your entire answer within the stipulated time with the synopsis, that is great. You can include synopsis in that case. There is no harm in including synopsis. You can go ahead with synopsis if you feel like, yes, I want to mention synopsis. And now what a bad answer is usually is, so it's like long paragraphs, there is no proper structure, there is no proper spacing, you do not highlight what you actually want to present through your answer, okay? I will show you an example of a bad answer. Mm. Okay, so your bad, what a bad answer or what a badly structured answer would be. Let's take the example of the question that I have already stated in the proper 10 marker question that I showed. Explain the evolution of right to information in India. Basically, the evolution. What was the evolution? So, in this, if you can see, there is just paragraph, 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 and finally it is concluded again with a paragraph. Okay. I hope everyone knows like how I had written my earlier properly structured answer. So when you're talking about the evolution part, you know there are a lot of phases, there are a lot of timelines when it comes to evolution part. Okay, so when your answer looks any kind like this, when it is only paragraph, paragraph, it's you have explained it only through paragraphs, this is not how you present the answer, because here I am damn sure no one is able to understand what are the different phases mentioned in this particular answer, or what is the even case law that is mentioned, because here there is no separate heading even for the case law as far as the matter is concerned. So here you're not you're not understanding what the different phases are. You're also not understanding where the case laws are, because it's not underlined also and there are no pointers also. So please always remember, your answer shouldn't look something like this, because if you're writing your answer like this, then please forget that you would even get a proper a decent marks even for this, because KSAU gives a decent amount of mark if your answer is structured the way I showed you earlier, like the handwritten part. If your answer is something like this, you would probably get 2 or 2.5 marks out of 10. So please make sure your answer is not like this. Make sure your answer is properly structured, because here there are no phases mentioned, there is no case law underlined, there are no pointers, there is nothing. So avoid these kind of answers. Okay. And then coming to the okay, moving on to the next slide. What are certain tricks that can be used when you're writing your examination or something? So sometimes, or what happens is, if you're unsure about what answer that you have to write, or if you're unsure about what content you want to actually write or include, Please do not write your answer in a paragraph format. Okay, please do not do that. Structure it. Even if you don't know the answer, please structure it. Write the point. Write introduction. Write what could you possibly include in that particular answer. Okay, so if your answer is including anything that is near to the topic that is being asked, that would also work. That would I'm sure that would be in like worst come worst scenarios, but make sure you follow the structure. Do not forget the structure. Write your answer in structure, even if you are if even if you're not remembering the proper content or proper information about that particular answer, whatever relevant provision. If just I'm not telling like write any random provision or something like that. Whatever you feel is coming near to that particular thing, make sure you write that. All in all, what I'm saying is structure your answer even if you don't know or have proper content for that answer. Because if you would do that, KSLU in this particular thing would definitely give you like 3.5 or maximum 4 marks also for that reason. So make sure you are following this trick for your for writing your examination or answers. Okay, now how reliable would the evaluator be on your answer or on your answer structure that you're presenting is? So you're writing an answer, you're presenting an answer. As I earlier stated, the evaluator would not read your entire answer. That is highly impossible for the evaluator to read your entire answer because the evaluator does not have enough time to read your answer. That is why structure is very, very important. Structure is the most important part when you're writing a law examination or basically when you're writing the KSLU answers. Okay, structure your answer because only if you write points or even if you highlight those things, the evaluators will directly look into those pointers and give you marks on that. That is the sole thing that the evaluators do. So that's why make sure you're doing all the presentation tips that I've given. Make sure you highlight the points, make sure you write the pointers, and avoid paragraphs. Please avoid paragraphs. So doing all these things will make the evaluator to rely the evaluator will highly rely on what points you're writing or what things you're underlining. So that is the most important thing when you are writing an answer. Now, final takeaway or what the thing, what basically about the answers is law exams. When it comes to law exams or when it comes to KSLE for that reason, structure is the most important thing. I would like to emphasize on structure again and again and again and again because only structure and clarity in your answers, underlining will definitely fetch you marks. If you don't do any of these things, forget that you would even pass in the examination. Okay, so please structure your answer properly. I had mentioned earlier also, even if your handwriting is not that well, please structure your answers because structuring your answers would it would directly direct the evaluator's attention to the points that you have mentioned. And also remember the two methods that I told, that is the 5 lakh method for the case based questions and the dream c formula that I've given for the 10 marks question. Make sure you follow these two, or if you have any other method that is relevant, you feel that is relevant, that can also be used. I'm not asking you guys to stick to the dream c or stick to the 5 lakh. Yes, stick to the 5 lakh method because the examiner or the evaluator, they rely on this 5 lakh method. Or as far as our teachers also have told, they have told like write your case based questions on the 5 lakh method. And as far as the dream c method is concerned, this was, I mean, I came up with this abbreviation. If you feel that this is appropriate or this can be used or this is very easy to remember and incorporate in your answers, you can also do this or rely on this. Or if you feel like you have any other method that is easy for you to remember, you can use that as well. But make sure all in all you have a proper structure to your answer. That is what I want to say. Thank you so much for your attention. If you have any queries, you can ask. If you guys have any queries, please go ahead. I hope all of you are clear with what I've explained. I hope it was pretty clear to everyone and all of you have got like a clear vision of how do you actually answer in a KSLU examination. I hope I was of great help to you guys. Also, if you guys have any doubts or something, anything of that sort, you guys, all of you know me also. You can contact me. You can also email me. You can come to my class also. Anything is possible. Adya, you have a doubt? All right. If you guys have any doubt, you can feel free to contact me anytime. I would be available. Can the synopsis be used as a structure to make it easy? To make it easy for evaluator. Yeah, see, I told you, you can, the dream C formula that I told you, right? That can also be used as synopsis, okay? So, whatever you want to actually include in your answer, no? So, you can write the dream C thing or anything of that thing as like a proper structure. It can also be included as a synopsis. So, that would definitely work. That can be used for making or for the evaluator to make the answer checking of the answer easy. So that can be done. Any other doubt? All right. I think I'm done. Over to yeah.
Right. Thank you to everyone who has joined the session. And Lawyers Hub would specially thank Prapti Rajeev for taking time out of a day to give us such insights. I'm pretty sure this is the most practical workshop a law student could have attended and a game changer for all of us throughout the rest of our law school. Um, Signing out from Lawyers Hub. Do check us out on Instagram. We'll be hosting such events every Friday between 5 to 6 p.m. And thank you. Thank you.
Thank you everybody for joining in. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nitha.